Somehow they just knew. And the place went nuts. It went nuts. People were crying. I mean, this is an icon. This is one of the top 10 figures in coaching in the whole United States. I mean, he is known from Connecticut to California, from California to Miami. I mean, this is the man.
Well, when Erk came, we had nothing at all. Day before he was going to come down, we realized we didn't even have a football. We sent somebody over across the street, Kmart, where it's a grocery store now. He came back with football, only he got the wrong one. It was just a little youth football. It wasn't even a big one.
But that is not so.
Oh, man, I gave him football. I know.
Excitement! Hello, my name is Eileen Baines, and I had the pleasure of interviewing Pat Hirsch, and I'm honored to bring you her story. My husband Nate was on the planning committee to bring in football, and part of that first crew that got together with the business people. Nate was in the booster club at the time, and so he lived and breathed it. Nate's always been a sports fanatic. In fact, people always kidded him that he only bought the radio stations just to put more sports on. So we were very involved when Erk first came to town. All the interviews and stuff, it was just a constant discussion on the telephone and in our home. It was just 24/7, every waking moment. The day of Erk's first press conference, we were at the mall, and Nate was going to interview Erk live on the radio. I was standing there with Nate and our daughter Sandy, who was about 18 months old at the time, and I just put Sandy down for a moment, and she went straight up to Erk and lifted up her arms. Now, he's being interviewed live on the radio, and he did not miss a beat. He just bent down and scooped her up and held her. And a picture of that went out all over the state at that time.
In my movie script about football at Georgia Southern, I have it where it's 1938, and it is cold. And we're out there in our old leather helmets and our baggy breeches, and we've got on the sweaters that have the big TC for Teachers College, and we're going for a field goal. And the kid kicks the ball, and it goes sailing through the goal post, and it's all in black and white and opaque. And suddenly it goes into the bright sunlit sky and lands out there on that field, and it's in full color. And the field is Paulson Stadium, and it is packed. And working the sidelines is Erk Russell. And Erk's face just zooms up on that screen. And then he talks about how he came here in '81 and went on to win that first championship in 1985.
Damn right, it's unbelievable. What makes anybody think they can suddenly play college football?
I don't know who this Erk Russell guy is, but my dad is a serious fan. When he heard Erk was going to coach the new football team, my parents drove down for a week and bought everything at the bookstore that had Georgia Southern written on it. I think this guy's serious.
Hey, listen, I played football in high school for 2 years. I was fullback and linebacker, JV defense.
Oh, wait a minute. So you mean to tell me that you're going to try out for a college football team coached by the meanest looking man in the state with just 2 years of junior varsity football under your belt?
Yes, sir, I am.
on down to Bob and Bill. Ask everybody on the hill. We're gonna have a great big thrill. Join the Talent Roundup.
I wonder how those open tryouts for the football team went.
Well, according to this, our coach and he said was greeted by some 126 of the most enthusiastic non-athletes I have ever seen.
Sounds promising.
Let's get physical, physical. Oh, let's get physical. Let's get physical. Everybody.
And everybody was, kind of mesmerized by him for the fact that they got to sit at the table with Erk. Now, we have 2 round tables, and at the first round table, well, there's no actual name on any chair, but you knew just about where everybody would sit and what time they would come in. So, this is where Coach would sit, so they wouldn't sit in Coach's chair. Now, one of the guys who'd been here for a long time, well, that didn't thrill him as much, but you could always look around during football season or something like that, or if we had something going on in town that would bring new people in, or tours, or families with kids coming to college. Well, they were just amazed that he came in here. Is that him? Is that Coach Russell?
I think his name gave credibility to the football program, and his personality gave it the reality that it was something special. I mean, his personality was more than magnetic. People just wanted to be around him.
Oh, he would come in the mornings, usually around 8:30 or so, either with an apple core or a banana peel in his hand, because he'd eat one or the other every morning, and he'd throw it away in the trash and then sit down for coffee. He'd order a whole quart. Really?
I remember he was sitting around this table one day, and he looked out that window, and he said, that would be a good place for a practice field. And Wayne Johnson, who was in the irrigation business and everything, and Joe Smallwood, who was in the grassy business, well, they got together and started talking. And the next thing you know, they go over there, they grass that field, and they irrigate it, and we got a practice field. He didn't have to ask somebody would they do something. All he had to do was mention it, and it was done. And that was kind of fun to watch. Everybody wanted to be a part of it like that. And I think that's what made it work. I mean, it was a blue-collar effort. I mean, people gave $5 a year, $10 for 3 years, and that wasn't a lot of money, but it was important to them. And I really think that's what made it work. I mean, I know Alan Paulson gave $1 million. And M.C. Anderson was responsible for the bowl where the stadium is, and that cost a bunch. But I think what made it effective and fun for everybody was everybody wanted to be a part of it like they were. And Erk brought some equipment down from the University of Georgia. I drove down to Tallahassee to Florida State, and over to Gainesville to the University of Florida, over to Mississippi State, Mississippi, Vanderbilt. We got all kinds of gear and all kinds of weird sizes, like extra, 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 extra large. I mean, we had all kinds of stuff that we begged and we borrowed and we bought used, and we ended up trading some of it over here and trading some of it over there, and we managed after a while to get all our troops suited up on the field.
Yeah, and Erk did fundraising in his own way. When we first started out, we went to places like Vidalia, Eastman, Macon, and his favorite program was folks. Give me $2 for a chin strap, $4 for a jock strap, $5 for a jersey, $20 for a pair of breeches. I need it all. And then he would go and talk about the dream of giving some young man who was a few pounds lighter or a few steps slower the chance of playing football in 1A.
And when Erk came here, he didn't even have an office. Robert Underwood's daddy-in-law sold mobile homes. He had a repo down in Brunswick, man. It was an old-fashioned trailer, 60 or 70 feet long. We drove down there, pulled it back to Statesboro, parked it behind the Hannah Field house, and hooked it up, and that's where Erk's office was. Of course, his office was back in the back, where the master bedroom used to be, and behind that was this bathroom. Man, it was feminine. It had this big garden tub, and all around that tub with these frilly pink curtains. Man, it was pretty. It was pretty funny. And Erk used that, like he used everything. He said, you know what? He said, our office is still on wheels. We don't win, they're going to pull us out of here. They're just going to hook us up and drag us off.
Yeah, his personality was something. I mean, his sense of humor was really something else. You know, we were a lot alike. We both loved practical jokes. And we really couldn't take each other seriously because I'd tell him something and he wouldn't believe it, and he'd do the same thing to me. But one thing I remember was early on, I used to call out to his office, and his secretary wouldn't always recognize my voice. And I'd say, well, this is Woody Hayes or Bear Bryant. And then Coach Russell would get on the phone and he'd say, don't do that.
Hello, I'm Dwayne Rice. Tonight I'm representing Dr. Bill Perry. We came in November of '81, which makes it coming up on 27 years. We came the first year as Erk. Of course, I'm a minister. When I meet new people, somebody's always saying, be careful, he's a preacher, or something like that. The first week I came a week before my family could come, so I stayed with members of the congregation. I stayed with Bruce's parents, Snooky and Nancy Yawn, so I ate breakfast at Snooky's, and one morning Snooky said, you got a minute? Let's go. I want to introduce you to Coach Erk Russell. So I went over to Erk's makeshift office that he occupied, and he said a funny thing. He stood up and he said, well, preacher, he said, I got a real building program here. I got a lot of work to do to get a football team started. He said, but I understand you're the new preacher at First Baptist Church, and I got to tell you, I met a few of your deacons, and you got a lot of work to do too. Just hands you in stitches. I know you've heard these over and over again, but one of my very favorite ones attributed to Erk is the story about Erk and the young graduate assistant that he was sending out to recruit. And Erk said, son, you know there are some players that get knocked down and they just stay down. And the graduate assistant said, that's not the kind we want as a coach. And he said, no, son, that's not the kind we want. He said, you know, there's some players that get knocked down, and they get back up, and they get knocked down, and they stay down. And the young graduate assistant said, that's not the kind we want as a coach. Erk said, no, son, that's not the kind we want. He said, but you know, there's some players that get knocked down, they get back up, and they get knocked down, they get back up, and they get knocked down, they get back up. And the young graduate assistant said, that's the kind we want, isn't it, Coach? And Erk says, no, son, that's not the kind we want. We want that fella that's been knocking all the others down. That's the one we want. So I've used that story from time to time. You know, life does sometimes just knock you down, but you do get getting back up. But sometimes you can be the knockee, if you will. There's another story I'd like to tell, but I couldn't really tell it in church like I'd like to, but it's a bit risque. But it's the story about the little boy who went in the bathroom and he come out and his pants were all wet. And he said, his dad said, son, what happened to you? And he said, well, Dad, he said, I went into the bathroom and there were only two places in there. And he said, there were two guys standing there and one couldn't start and one couldn't stop it. I just couldn't wait.
Well, for the capital campaign, we had 18 rallies. And it was usually dinner at a country club or some other nice place. We knew that if we had Erk on the program, we would get a crowd. And Erk would get up and, you know, they didn't come to see Dick Henry, the president. They didn't come to see Perk Robbins, the vice president. They wanted to see Erk. And he would tell 4 or 5 stories. And I'll just mention a couple of things here. The first one's kind of become a classic. He would look out at the crowd and he would say, is there anyone here from Clemson? And there would be somebody there from Clemson, or somebody who knew somebody from Clemson. And then he would say, what you might not know is that originally it was called Clem University. Now, the students, faculty, the alumni, they didn't think that was a very sophisticated name, Clem University. So they began a search to change the name. And after 2 or 3 years, they came up with S-O-N. Now, the S would stand for chivalry, the O for honor, and the N for knowledge. Oh, my. Now, for the Capitol campaign, he said that our slogan was going to be G-A-T-A. Now, those of us around the football program, we knew what that last A really stood for. But if there was a mixed crowd, he would say it stood for get after them aggressively. But for the Capitol campaign, he said that G-A-T-A meant get after their assets. Now, he did tell a few other stories in private, but I don't think I'm going to tell those in public.
Oh, you know, kids would come in, and if there were a couple of little boys, and he's sitting there with his little cigar, and he'd say, well, you know, it wasn't lit, you know, he'd say, here, you want a puff? They'd look at him and laugh and say, no, no. He usually came back in the afternoons, too. He'd get here at 8:30 and then around 3 o'clock, but I was gone by then. Well, one day when I had to come back for something, I saw him in this Santa Claus suit. Now, here he was with no hair, no beard, no hat. Just this bald head and a red Santa Claus suit. So, you know, that's the way he was. Oh, he'd come back for lunch, too. He'd come over to the buffet, and he'd get a plate, and he'd heap it full of turnip greens. Now, we would cook our turnip greens in ham hock, and he'd usually go dig out that ham hock and then go tell Bruce, well, I got my meat free today.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Williams, and I'm honored to play the role of my spiritual sister, Charlotte Woody. Snookins, I knew a bit, but most people that I knew went to Sarah's place at least twice a day for coffee. Sarah's place was a place for entertainment. I even had an opportunity to sing some, you know, as a college student at that time. I came to Georgia Southern in 1980 as a full-time employee. I was a clerk in the Vice President of Academic Affairs office, and I became a part-time student about the time Erk was starting the football program. So everyone knew who he was and what he was here to do. Georgia Southern had celebrated most of its activities around the basketball season, you know, like homecoming. But the football program took us to a new place relative to the type of activities that were being planned. When he did appear, it was a big deal, but I didn't know how big of a deal it was because I didn't know much about football at the time. I remember when I first met him, it was in one of those PE running classes. You know, one of those classes where you had to run the mile in 12 minutes. I was in the gym running one day, and there he was. He was actually running himself. And I was running up those steps. I was going back and forth, back and forth. And he stopped and came up to me, and he gave me some pointers on what I could do to improve my conditioning. That was the kind of person he was, and I'll always remember that. You know, I really came to know him through the eyes of his players like Tracy Ham and others at that time.
We were part of the Eagles wing. We had a swimming pool at that time, and these young men, the football players, would come over to swim, and we'd cook for them. They'd turn around and wash dishes for us, and, you know, help us out tremendously. One young man, Doug, he eventually went into the ministry. We had 4 young men at different times, and one of them was Ted Woodard. Now, Ted's birthday was the same day as our daughter Mandy's, and another player's birthday was the same day as Sandy's. So we have celebrated their birthdays, and well, our daughters adopted them like their big brothers. You know, they would do things like buy me corsages for their homecoming, and we'd cheer for them to get in the games, and well, they were like our children, really. We have pictures of Ted. He was a black young man and a big, big guy. And Doug, the young man that went into the ministry, well, he had this bird. And we've got this picture of Ted sitting there with this bird on his head. Ted wound up being killed in an automobile accident. And his family came up from Jacksonville and were at our home. One thing I think people don't know about these players is that they were very involved in the community. Well, they go out to the schools and do a lot of Special Olympics work. Well, our youngest daughter, Jennifer, well, she'd go to the games and practices with Nate, and the sports information directors would bring players over to her.
He was Coach Erk Russell, and he hadn't said a word. He just had that mean look about him. And then, of course, some of the pictures of him on the sideline of the Florida-Georgia game, leaning on his head. And looking at him, I'm going, okay, it's the same guy that was headbutting players on the sideline. But when he spoke about his plans for the school and plans he had for me, because my only question was I going to play quarterback? That was the only thing I needed to know before I decided if I was coming or not. So he laid out the program, and from there, it just took off.
You know, I do recall the football practices at Statesboro High School on their practice field because I had to pick up my nieces and nephews. I had an opportunity to watch the relationship between he and his students, and we all got to see what that turned out to be.
Yes, and you know, you get to the point where the coach sends you in to play, and it ain't practice no more. Something's bound to happen to your reality. My best buddy, Doug Cope, and his wife, and my wife at the time, and I went to that first game together, played there at the high school football field. And I woke up that morning and I said to Carolyn, now remember, I've been working on this thing for 2 years. And I said to Carolyn, I guess we're going to find out if it was all for real tonight. I said, I tell you, I'm going to lay my head in your lap. And if Doug says, oh my God, we'll never get there, or he just doesn't say anything at all and keeps driving. Well, we got about 3 blocks from the high school field, and those magic words came. Doug said, good God Almighty, would you look at that? And I raised up and looked, and there were hundreds of cars. I mean, it was like the field of dreams. The little girl said, Daddy, if you build it, they will come. Well, that was her. And people came because they knew they were going to experience a moment of historical, not hysterical.
Historic.
A historic moment. Something to remember forever. We walked on that field, and there were sheeps hanging over the fences on the sideline saying, hi, Mom, send money. Just like NBC was going to be there. Well, we played the 4th fitting Doughboys. Let's see, we went on to play the Jacksonville Magnum Force and the Florida State JVs. Those were the 3 games we played that year. And the crowds just sat there in awe.
Hand to make
by far. All other moves that I made coaching were more or less cut and dried. It was just a matter of let's go. And it just points out the enthusiasm and the great attitude that the people not only of Statesboro but Southeast Georgia in general have toward our starting football program. I made up my mind that I'd never look back. We're in this thing and we're going to take the ball and go with it. And I've had no second thoughts about it at all. And then we have room for another, at least an 80-yard field that will run parallel to our full 100-yard field. And then farther on down is plenty of practice space. And then, who knows, this could turn into something on down the road that is really big. That's the way I see it.
Let's get something straight, Fred. Ever since this football phenomenon began, I've allowed you to talk me into the merits of high-profile team sports as they relate to an institution of higher education.
Check.
I've been swayed into understanding that the collective identity of a community and a college can be enhanced by a sport that's played just once a week for 3 months in the fall.
Check.
I've even been going to football games, wearing the fan regalia of my institution of employment, both at home and away. I've even been known to cheer.
Loudly.
Now you would have me consider that mysticism, which apparently springs forth as a brackish stream of filthy rainwater runoff, has some key role to play in the success or failure of this team. Am I following you correctly? Honestly, I don't care if it's tactics, psychology, or voodoo. I just really want to win the next game.
Me too, my friend, me too.
Hello, my name is Michelle Hankerson, and tonight I will be playing Miss Sandra Prince. You know, Erk was a dichotomous figure. From my point of view as a cheerleader, well, he was sweet. He was a good guy. He had a good character. To the cheerleaders, he was almost like a grandfatherly type figure. His shoulders were a little rounded forward, a little hunched forward, and that little shuffle he had, just like a sweet old man to us. But if you ever had the chance to hear him or see him out on the practice field or on his way to the locker room at halftime, oh, you saw that division. He could instill the fear of God into the biggest player. You couldn't even believe that this was the same person. But he also had a very good fatherly relationship with them. I mean, it was the whole winning attitude that the school and the community had at that time. T-A-T-A was get after their you-know-whats, and it was a mantra. It was a thing that drove our success. It's believing in a program, a system. And that system, well, that system was Erk Russell. Oh, and the rituals, especially when you think about the college level football players, they're very ritualistic. Preachers. And so our players, beautiful Eagle Creek, well, it was a ritual that they believed in. It had powers to help them win. And that's all you need to succeed. It's faith in your ability and belief in the rituals that you do. So, for our players, bringing that beautiful foul creek to an away game and sprinkling it all over the football players, the opponent's football field, well, in their minds, it could help them win the game. It was like having an extra player. No, it wasn't luck. Luck isn't something you believe in. They believed in Eagle Creek. And, well, it was important.
Hi, I'm Jane Rocker, and I'm excited to present to you Jane Page. Oh, I was a sports fan. I married into a sports family. My brothers-in-law and my first husband, the Page boys, they were all into sports, and if I didn't learn about sports, I couldn't stay in a conversation with them. So I read
college professor, and I was doing a lot of research at the time, trying to move up in the academic ranks, and well, that was pretty much my life, my work, and my family, and the church. But I did enjoy sports, but not like I did when Erk Russell came. Now, Erk was a big buddy of all fans. He was so approachable. He knew you by name. Now, his real buddies, though, were the guys at Snooki's. Now, those were his buddies. But he was very friendly with all the fans, all the women fans, and all those of us who weren't Snookiites, too. You know, I didn't want football at Georgia Southern. It was not something I desired. I was afraid of having football in a small school like Southern because we needed our money for other things. And I voted against it. No, we cannot do this. We're not supporting the teams we have. And back then we weren't supporting them, so how were we going to support football? And then I thought about our community. The farming industry was struggling. And I thought, these small family farmers, how are they going to give the kind of money it takes to support football? Well, when we saw what that program really was all about, we got behind the football program and behind Erk Russell. Now, we started going to the games initially because Fred, my first husband, was on the chain crew, and my older son became a ball boy. He carried the balls, Erk's headphones, and so they were needed. They were needed to do things. And I was needed. I was needed to stand in the stands and cheer. Now, at first, we didn't have a band. And then when we did, we couldn't take them to the away games because there wasn't any money. So I had this little Radio Shack megaphone that my daddy had bought me. And I'd take that up in the stands and we'd go, boom, 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 boom. Lots of times we couldn't take the cheerleaders because there wasn't any money for them either. So we'd yell, go Big Blue, go Big Blue. And then we'd get the megaphone, boom, 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 go Georgia Southern. And the guys on the football team would tell us, we can hear you all up there. And Erk would say, we gotta have the 12th man. We've got 11 men on the field, but we gotta have the 12th man. That's the fans. And we were the 12th man. We were there. We were the 12th man. And well, it was exciting. I remember one time